I leave the share, right? Hi, good afternoon. My name is Anna Roqueza, and I'm a facilitator and consultant of Franklin Covey. Really happy to be with you this afternoon as we share a little about my learnings and experience on the field. Okay. When we talked about having this Facebook Live, to tell you the truth, I was a little nervous because it's the first time I'm going to do this. But I've been so passionate about the Franklin Covey learnings that I've had that I said, okay, let me give it a shot and I'll try to do this, right? Like everything else, these challenging times has brought out some new talents that all of us may have had, okay, that we didn't know had. And that's what we're going to be doing today. So my experience is basically, I first experienced the Franklin Covey training programs when I was at IBM Philippines. I spent 34 years of my career in IBM. And I had attended a program that the 7 Habits program at that time that really impressed me so much. And that's the reason why I told myself, when I retire from IBM, I'm going to start training and teaching these programs outside IBM because I wanted more of you to really experience what I experienced in Franklin through the Franklin Covey training programs. Okay, so as I'm going to try to answer some of the questions that have been brought up here in Facebook, how to be able to get more from our direct reports, how can I increase employee engagement, and deliver the tough messages, right? More and more tough messages have to be delivered to our employees, to our peers, and even to our boss. And all of those questions I'll try to answer through my experience in industry, but also through the learnings that I've had from Dr. Stephen Covey, okay? So I hope you will get something out of this to at least help you to deal with the very difficult and challenging situations that we face today. It's a reality, okay? The pandemic has caused us to face situations where never before we'd experienced it. I mean, I may have worked 34 years in IBM, but it's never been like this where things are so complex and unusual. And our employees themselves have to work in a different environment, right? And this picture probably looks familiar to some of us. The thing is, the situation today is that each individual will face a different challenge. I find myself very comfortable doing online classes at home, but that's because my experience was such when I was in IBM and my children are grown up. But as you can see in the photo today, a lot of our employees are really physically and emotionally challenged simply because the situation has changed. Previously, it was just about talking about work-life balance. How can you balance work and life and switch off? But you had two different work locations, right? You work in the office, you come home and attend to the kids. Kids are in school. But today that doesn't happen, right? Children are at home with you and you have to be able to manage that. For others, the situation might be more about living alone and having to stay home alone and not having much interaction because of the lockdowns and to stay safe. And that can drive you also, emotionally deliver a lot of anxiety. So we definitely have to, first of all, as leaders, if you want to communicate, understand, and empathize with your employees, which is the cue that we're going to cover today, you need to first understand what your employees are going through. And be vulnerable as well to admit that you yourself might be experiencing some of the challenges of the situation as well. Okay, so let's take a look at the more challenging roles that we have as a leader, having to deal with the business climate that's so volatile, so uncertain, complex, that we can't really, we've always been in control, being able to say, this is what's going to happen by this date and plan everything. And today we have to be more agile, right? Be able to do that differently. And the best thing for us as leaders to do is to make sure our employees continue to stay engaged. Okay, so what do we mean by employee engagement? It's not just about coming to work every day and doing a job, right? Employee engagement is the extent to which employees feel really passionate about their jobs and are committed to your organization by putting what we call discretionary effort into their work. You know what discretionary effort is? It's really when your employees are willing to volunteer something that you may not have asked for, but they know they have the potential to be able to do that. Dr. Covey himself, when he used to run a lot of leadership programs, he would ask the audience, how many of you think your job allows you to use your talents to 100% or beyond that? And more often than not, everyone would raise their hands. Think about it today, are you using all the talents that you have, the potentials that might be latent in each of us? If the answer is maybe yes, maybe no, but not really to that extent and not passionately enough saying, yes, I can do it, then maybe there's an opportunity for us to help our employees and to help ourselves to be able to increase that level of productivity and passion that we have for the job. So employee engagement is really what we're talking about. Now, there are different levels of employee engagement. And the thing is about employee engagement is the higher the level of employees who are engaged, okay, the more they can contribute to the business. As a matter of fact, employee engagement has been directly attributing to at least 2 or 4 different business outcomes. So a highly engaged employee can become more productive and can actually provide profitability for the business, right? You're able to retain them better. In other words, they're more loyal to the business. Plus, they can provide better customer service. So, okay, if employee engagement can do all of that, why aren't all our employees at that level of engagement? What can we as leaders continue to do? So let me share with you what we call the employee engagement ladder, or the engagement ladder. And here you really focus on 2 different types of employees. On the blue side or above the line, you have the employees who are positively contributing to the business. So for every head count that you have, they'll deliver at least equivalent to 1 head count or even more as you go up the employee ladder. On the other hand, below the line, you have what we call the nega stars, okay, as in the negative stars, because these are the people who you hire to do a certain job, but somehow they're not able to contribute because their level of employment of engagement is quite low. The thing is, as a leader, we have to realize that we cannot tell our employees in which level of engagement they should be at. However, okay, we can influence their choice. So it is the employee's choice whether he wants to just cooperate with you. In other words, you tell them to do something and they'll do it. Or if they'll go all the way up to creative engagement, which is, you know what, if you tell me to do this, I love this job so much. You make me feel really important. I see the meaning in my job that I'm going to do even more. I'm going to volunteer time to do much more than what you initially expected me to do. On the other hand, below the line, you can imagine it's the complete opposite, right? Where initially the employee will just do what you tell them to do because they get paid, right? I got to do the minimum to get paid. But they can actually be at the lowest employee engagement level where they rebel or quit. And what's even worse is if they quit mentally, but not physically. So they continue to bring in all these negative vibes in the work environment and influence the rest of the employees. So when you think about this engagement ladder, you realize, oh my gosh, you have to take a seat back and say, in what level of engagement are my employees? I myself, in what level of engagement am I? If we were to put numbers, a person above the line in willing cooperation will probably give 80% of his talent, of his passion into his job, okay? In heartfelt commitment, it's at 100% productivity. But in creative excitement, it can go up to 150%, all right? And you know what? When employees are at that creative excitement, they don't even realize that, hey, I'm giving more than what I've been paid to do. No, because they just want to do it because they feel truly passionate about the job that they're doing. And then, of course, you go below the line, and these are the employees who are not even giving you equivalent of what one headcount should be giving, right? And it's diminishing returns. And when you get to rebel or quit, it actually becomes a negative sum game where they're no longer contributing to the business itself, okay? So employee engagement strategies have proven that if we can get all our employees to at least above the line, we can reduce staff turnover. We can improve productivity and efficiency, plus retain customers at a higher rate. And of course, make more profits for the business. Most importantly, engaged employees are happier both not just at work, but at home as well. And in today's environment where we cannot be replacing attrition, where a lot of the time we're asked to do more with less, what we as leaders have to do is expand our current resources by increasing that level of engagement so that our one headcount can actually deliver more than what we would expect from a regular one headcount. As an immediate manager, it has been proven, okay, that the immediate manager directly influences these items of productivity, efficiency, retention, and profitability because of the culture that they create. So now the responsibilities on all of us as first-line leaders or as the leaders to increase engagement. So now that we understand engagement is important, what do we have to do to be able to increase the levels of engagement of our employees? So let's understand what really drives engagement. Okay, so when an employee works in an environment where he feels there's trust between him and the people that they work with, you have an environment of trust. When they feel that they're doing meaningful work, that means they know that if I do this, it'll contribute to the top line of my organization. So this is not just preparing a report one after the other when no one ever reads it. No, really meaningful work that the employee can connect, okay, and align himself to the bigger organizational goal. The other thing that drives engagement is feeling that they're part of a winning team. So if they work in an environment of trust where everybody's helping each other, everybody trusts that each one is giving their best, they know how their work contributes to the bigger picture, then you will have a highly engaged team that will be delivering results. And when they deliver results, they'll feel like they're part of that winning team. And finally, feeling that this team is not gonna be the same without me, right? So I feel like I'm a valued member. So if we as leaders consider these 4 areas that drive engagement and create a work atmosphere, a culture that builds this, we will get our employees above the line all the way up to creative excitement. As a matter of fact, these 4 drivers of engagement align directly with what we would call in Franklin Covey the 4 essential roles of leaders. Let me show you how. Okay? So first of all, environment of trust, our role as leaders is to inspire trust. And it really talks about the 4 cores of credibility, right? Who we are, the integrity that we show, the intent whenever we do a job, being competent on the job, and or credibility where you have the skill, and because of that, delivering results. So inspiring trust is not just all about being nice, okay, and understanding to all the people. No, you got to show results as well. And when you balance this, character of the manager and their competence, then you will be able to get your team to believe in you and inspire trust. That in return builds an environment of trust. When it comes to meaningful work, the only way they can see meaning in their work is if they can align it to a bigger picture, right? So as a leader, we need to create that vision for them. This is where we want to go. Beyond the pandemic, this is what we want to achieve. Or during this pandemic period, let's look for opportunities. Let's stop focusing on our circle of concern, the things that worry us that we can't do anything about, like when will the vaccine come out? When will it be available? Let's deal with the here and now. What can we do? What is within our circle of influence? And let's build that vision around it, right? Based on what we have today. And if people have that clear vision that they've created together with their leader, then they will feel how their work can contribute to achieving that vision. So there has to be that alignment that you as a leader will have to share. Finally, okay, winning, how can they feel like they're winning? Then we have to give them a roadmap to executing to strategy. Currently, that execution has changed drastically from where we were just 12 months ago, right? Or maybe even 10 months ago before the pandemic. People could come to the office. They had all the resources that they needed. There were certain ways that they could work. They could even do things face to face. And today we don't have that. So we have to look back as leaders based on the current situation. What are the things that need to be adjusted so that we can still execute to our strategy to allow us to achieve our vision? Executing to strategy also has to allow us to live within the whirlwind that we live today, our day to day, having children stay home from work, from school, right? Not being able to come to the office for whatever reasons, limited resources. So having to consider all of that and still finding a way to overcome and win. In other words, turning around those strategies or those challenges into opportunities, right? And that's what will make your team feel like they are winning. And if we inspire trust, there's a clear vision in which they can execute successfully, each of your team members will actually feel valued. To feel valued, we need to help our employees by coaching them. And that's partly what we're going to, or a lot of what we're going to be talking about today. which is how can we communicate with our employees so that so they know we understand their situation. We know that they are challenged, but we will help them flip that challenge into opportunity, as well as make sure that they see meaning in their work so that they can continue to be engaged. Okay, so engagement is such a big thing across the industry, especially with the HR folks who are always trying to help their leaders, okay, see how they can increase employee engagement. As a matter of fact, I'd like to quote this industry survey called the Gallup Survey. Some of you may already be familiar with it. But the Gallup Survey, the intent of the Gallup Survey is really to measure employee engagement. Okay, it's important to differentiate engagement from employee satisfaction. Okay, I can be very happy on my work, on my job, in terms of satisfied because I get paid well, I have what I need, but I might just be, delivering to the minimum, right? I'm happy, yeah, that's fine, but I'm not passionate about my job. And that's what employee engagement measures, right? So what Gallup has done, and they run this around the world, is they ask 12 specific questions of people, right? And who answered the survey. And I'd like to share with you what these questions are, okay? So as I mentioned, it's an employee survey that's done, and it consists of 12 questions. Take a look at the 12 questions because they actually link. If we get high scores when we answer this engagement survey in these 12 questions, then it proves that our employees are highly engaged, okay, or in the upper levels of engagement. So let me share the first 6 questions of Gallup. The first 2 questions basically talk about, what's expected of me at work. So remember, we talked about creating vision as a leader. So this kind of deals with understanding how much of that vision they understand. The next few questions really deal about how an employee feels at work or how they feel valued. We talked about employees feeling valued as a key role of increasing engagement. Here, we look at what are some of the opportunities that you can have, right? Or in the last 7 days, have you been recognized for something? Is there someone who cares for you as a person? Is there someone at work who encourages your development? So these questions seem very straightforward, but I really wonder how often we as leaders take the time to ask our employees these questions. But this is part of communicating with our employees and understanding their situations. Okay? And there are 6 more questions that will help us understand our employees better, according to Gallup. So let me just bring down all 6 questions. So here again, it talks about, does the employee feel really valued? Wherein my opinions will count. And then aligning it to the corporate mission and vision, and then understanding also from your employees' point of views. Because we may consider what's the engagement of each of our employees or each of our direct reports. But what we may not realize is that in our team themselves, they're probably comparing, how come, Lila can work from home and I have to come to the office and we're doing similar jobs, and employees also have this type of questions. So, in terms of, do they feel that the rest of the team is contributing as well? A question, I've done some consulting lately on this Gallup, and question number 10 has really been impacted, okay, by the pandemic. I guess concept of having a best friend is a physical relationship, right? We go to lunch together, we eat, we have chats together, and so forth. And this has been affected so much so that it's actually gone down so much in this year, 2020 alone, for that one particular client. But as you read the question, have a best friend at work. As a leader, I think we should pose as that best friend to our employees. We're in a best position to understand the situation. After all, when you define what a best friend is, it's somebody who's willing to listen to me, right? Somebody who's willing to have a chat with me about anything and willing to help me if I need help. So these are things that you as a leader, I think, should be able to do. And of course, if we focus on it, right? And then the last two questions are about future opportunities, where employees see a future in the company. Especially today where things are so volatile, people don't even know, am I going to have a job tomorrow? Is my business going to shut down? I mean, we don't know what's going to happen, right? Businesses are really stretching themselves. As you read the 12 questions, and you can search the questions if you really want to go deep and ask your employees about this. But what it made me realize is that these 12 questions are simply giving me an inkling of what are the things I need to know about each of my employees. As a leader, we sometimes get stuck in the work that has to be done. We make assumptions and we actually forget, right, to understand each of our employees. We need to see our direct reports more than just human resources, but as unique individuals. So the next step is, because now we realize, okay, if I want to expand my resources or the productivity of my team, I need to get them highly engaged. How do I get them highly engaged as a leader? I create that environment, right, of engagement, of full engagement. But before you can get to that, you need to understand each of your employees' situation first. And that's what we call understanding your employees with a whole person paradigm. What's that? Okay, it's something probably you may be aware of and not really given full attention to. But when we look at our employees, we focus mostly on their body and their mind. We want to make sure they're physically fit to come to work. We pay them properly so they work in a nice office or they have a good work environment at home. And then, of course, the mind is about the skills that they have, right? Where we want to make sure they have what they need to be able to continue to work at the office and deliver, right? But there are two additional dimensions that sometimes, because we're just so busy, we tend to forget to attend to that, right? And it's really the heart and the spirit of our direct reports or the people that we deal with. As a leader, you need to make sure that all these four paradigms, four dimensions of a human person is actually addressed. If you go back to the Gallup questions, you will see questions like what makes you happy? Who's your best friend, right? Those are things that when you ask an employee about that, and your employees will say, my boss really cares about me because he's asking me about things not directly related to the work that I do, but about my own well-being. Spirit is about leaving that legacy behind. You want to leave a legacy. All employees basically want to do something that will make a difference, right? And as a leader, you have to help them to discover what is that one thing that if they did differently from everybody else, it'll set them apart. So as a leader, you need to make sure that each of these dimensions in a human body, in a human person, are explored. And the best way to do that is really to start a conversation. Don't worry so much about the quality of the conversation, okay? All you have to do is really show your employee that you are going to make time. I think as a leader, we need to spend time, okay, yes, schedule a meeting to discuss business priorities. However, you also need to spend equally the same amount of time with the person, not to discuss work per se, but discuss their needs, their personal situations. And by doing that, by communicating with them, then they will realize that, okay, my boss cares about me. And then those 4 dimensions, number 1, that will inspire trust. Okay, that will build that environment of trust because you'll have time for this one. And once the trust is there, then I believe everything else will follow. Feeling like they're part of a valued member of a team, winning in the team, and really continuing with that. Without trust, kasi none of this can happen. So it starts with you building trust, because no matter how much you create an environment where they'll have all the resources to do their work, you'll send them to training. If they don't have the trust, they will not give their own. And they'll never really go above that blue line. So now it's about having those conversations with your direct reports, right? So that you understand them better. When we have conversations with our employees, we have to make sure we have not just the common leadership mindset wherein, if I win, you lose. And, in other words, if I get my way, you can't do it your way. Or if you do it your way, then that means I can't get my way. The thing is, in a win-lose or a lose-win mindset, eventually you'll both lose. Because number 1, if you're a leader who constantly wins because I am the boss, it's my position, I'm very courageous in telling people how things are, yeah, your employees will follow you. But you know what? After a while, if it's not following you because they trust you, because they believe in you, because they're passionate about you, they will find somebody else who can give that to them. Okay? So that's about not being too courageous. Now you go to lose-win. It's about being too understanding and not courageous enough to call out when maybe the employees really need to be called out about not performing in certain areas. Okay? So balancing this courage and consideration is key in making sure that you have not just the common leadership mindset, but the highly effective leadership mindset, where you come into a situation where, you know what, direct report, I want us both to get, to win at the end, right? In other words, we will achieve our business objectives, but we will also consider your current situation and do what's best with it, right? And this is really balancing the courage to tell the employee when, well, it doesn't take too much courage to tell an employee that he's doing well, right? That's the easy part. But it takes courage for you to tell the employee when something is not going right and when he needs to change how he's doing something, right? So that's what courage is about, the ability to straight talk, to tell people exactly as it is, but doing that respectfully. Because consideration is important as well. The current challenges that the employee has, you need to understand that and work around it as well. So it really starts with the mindset of a leader and balancing that courage and consideration to get to that right win-win mindset. So again, if you want to do that, you have to first know who your employees are, right? And what's challenging them, because not everybody will be the same. A win for one person might not be a win for another person. So it behooves you as a leader to understand your employees better. And the best way to do that is to make sure that you have feedback that goes, an environment of feedback is what I'd like to say, where you should be able to give feedback to the employees, and employees can also give feedback to you. But it really depends on the leader, whether he'll make the employees feel comfortable giving feedback. So some things about feedback. The first thing is never label or use comparative language. So when you give feedback to employees, just talk about that employee's performance. Do not try to compare him to other people in the team. Remember, each person is unique. That's why the 4 dimensions of a whole person, You need to understand that for each of your employees. So never compare, because situations will never be the same between employees. Yeah, they may be doing the same job, but each of them may be experiencing different challenges, right? The other thing is, don't label. Because when you say, oh, you tend to be lazy, then it becomes a mindset, which is a loose win, right? And if you always have that mindset that this person is lazy, it's not going to help you overcome. In other words, rather than labeling people, try to focus on specific situations and keep that win-win mindset. So some of the feedback do's, it really starts with, as a leader, knowing what's going on. Okay? It starts with a win-win mindset, and then where your intention for giving feedback should always be because you want the person to get better. I always say feedback is a gift. If it's positive feedback, then it's reinforcement, telling the person that, hey, you know what? You're doing great. Yeah, and keep it up. Whatever you're doing, it's working. The other thing is, when it's constructive feedback, it still is a gift because it gives the other person an opportunity to do something about it before the problem gets any worse, right? And correct it. The thing is, unless we call it out, the person might not even know he's doing something wrong, right? So to give proper feedback, the first thing you have to do is you have to identify the issue. What's the issue, especially for constructive feedback? I think people don't have a problem giving positive feedback, okay? But the thing is also, if you just give positive feedback, that's what you call positive toxicity, right? Oh yeah, just talks about the good stuff, but not what's really happening. So you have to be able to balance that, right? So it starts with describe your concern. What is the problem? Okay? You've been coming in late, for example. But don't just say, I heard, or somebody saw you. When you describe a concern, make sure you yourself was the one who observed the specific concern. It's either you saw it happening, okay, you actually observed it, or you have the data to back it up. The worst thing that you can do when you give feedback is I heard, or someone told me, or this is the impression I get. No, it has to be based on facts. Make sure when you give feedback, you describe a concern, you share a specific observation, and then give an example. So don't just say you're always late or you never are online. You can say on Monday and on Tuesday, I noticed that you got into the system online, into the system 1 hour late. And because of that, you then describe the impact. So what? If you came in late, what's the impact? Because of that, we had some client calls that had to be diverted to your teammate. And they had to handle that in addition to their regular load. So when you want to give real good feedback, as I mentioned, it has to be your own very, very specific description of the concern, your observation, and it's backed up by real information. And then you give that example. When you give feedback, it's important that you also do this emphatically. What do we mean by emphatically? Okay, it's emphatic listening is really about not just listening, to the employee so that you can respond, but you listen and try to understand from the employee's point of view. And this is where your compassion, your consideration will show, right? So it starts with preparing really for your feedback session. Don't just call in an employee and then say, I've noticed these things, and without having prepared. You want to make sure you prepare. How do you prepare? Understand the issue, as I said, and the impacts, all right, of the feedback that you want to give. And then aside from that, anticipate responses. Do not just come in and expect the employee to accept everything that you've told him. Oh, but I have all the data. try to anticipate what the employee will tell you so you can be better prepared with some answers as well. And then, while you're doing this, create a win-win agreement with the employee so that he sees feedback as not just your way of dumping everything on him, but because you really want to, the intention is really to get him back on track, okay, for whatever the situation is. So listening emphatically is very important, not just when you're giving feedback, but actually for every conversation that you might have. Okay? So as I look at this, I go back to the initial questions we said we would answer, and it's really about communicating. I guess in the queue, communicating is the first step, and doing that so that you can really understand your employee and they can understand you too, okay? And then doing that emphatically. So as a leader, I know we are facing challenging times, but it's during these times that real leadership will stand out. And hopefully, from this sharing, you'll be able to pick up a few things that you can use to really be that leader that people will want to follow. And just to close, true leaders always practice the 3 R's. What do you think the 3 R's are? Respect for self, respect for others, and responsibility for all their actions. So with that, I'd like to thank you so much for your time. And if there's still some time for questions, I'm still around. Okay, so Javik, over to you. Have any questions come in? Okay, so thank you. Yep, feedback is super important. And yeah, to RA, feedback should be 2 ways. It should not be just the leader giving feedback to his employees, but also give that opportunity for the employees to give feedback to the leader. And I know it gets scary for the employees. So as a leader, you really have to be the one to really encourage it. So you have to find opportunities. Maybe have a round table with your team and tell them, hey team, it's time for you guys to give me feedback. And I can step out of the room and you can talk about yourselves and in these areas that I think, where you think I can do better. So you have to be creative about that culture of feedback and getting people to give you feedback as well. Okay. So if there are no more questions, do I wrap up now, Javik? Just want to check with my producer, okay?
Hi, everyone. This is...
Okay. So we have Paulo Reyes. He leads our marketing team here at Franklin Covey. But Pao, you've gone on mute.
Sorry about the interruption there. This is Paolo. I was just going to message that so far no one has brought up a question in the Facebook feed. I think we have a few more minutes. So those of you who may have questions, please do feel free to send them in through the chat for Anna to share her thoughts if anyone has any comments. Again, sorry for the interruption earlier, Anna.
No worries. Thanks, Pao. So this is really an exciting time for us managers. I can't imagine, I think about myself being a mother maybe a couple of years ago, having to be with my children and having a job to do, doing this remotely. I can imagine it's difficult for all of you, but it's something that I think we can all overcome together if we continue to focus on things we can really influence and work as a team. Keeping that win-win mindset as well would probably work out. Okay? So, okay, we have a question from Kay. Hi, Kay. Culturally, we usually tend to look for negatives versus positives when giving feedback. How do we change that culture in our organization? Okay, it really starts with appreciating each person, right? And the only way you can do that is really to ask, ask the whole person dimension questions, right? If you get to know what each person does and what their strengths are, and do it really consciously, because I agree with you. It's so easy to find fault in what other people are doing and the negatives, right? However, if we start to focus on their strengths as well, then we will start to see the little things that they are doing. And that's how people will really feel valued, not just for always being called out for doing the wrong things, but also for being called out for doing the right things. And trying to understand each of your employees and spending time to understand what's valuable to them, I think will bring out the positives as well. But it's really something that you as a leader will have to influence that culture. And it starts with you, by you giving little feedback. You saw the Gallup survey question. Has somebody given you positive feedback in the last 7 days? Can you imagine 7 days? They expect you to give some positive feedback. And I think for me, positive feedback or recognition, it was really recognition in the last 7 days, it could be as simple as, hey, thank you for working through lunch just to be able to address, the issue that we had. So I think it helps to just the little things that people do and taking notice of that, and they'll appreciate that too. So thanks, Kay, for your question. Okay, are there other questions? Just back to Kay's question, I think as a leader, you really have to dig deep, okay, into each of your people to be able to find those positives in the midst of everything that's going on. Okay. So we have 1 more minute before we wrap up. So if there are any other questions, please put them on the Facebook chat, and then JVic passes that on to me. Okay, so I think that's about it. If you have questions that you can think of later on, please send them to our Facebook and we will get back to you. In the meantime, I just want to thank all of you. I know this is a busy time of year as we all prepare to wrap up the year. It's been one heck of a year for all of us. And as I said, let's focus on what we've had to learn, what we've had to overcome in this last year. And really, it's going to make us the warriors that are needed for the years to come as leaders. So I want to thank all of you. And in advance, I'd like to greet you all a happy, blessed, Merry Christmas to you and all your loved ones. And continue to ask us questions on Facebook Live and we'll get back to you. Okay? Bye.